Hello, everyone. So, today I'm going to share with you the second episode of Navigating Spirituality, and I'm here again with my previous guest, Skyla, and we're talking about the mother and father wound. We go into detail about what it means to address a wound that you have, both with the parental side of the wound, both with the collective side, which includes the connection we have or lack of connection we have with Mother Earth and with Father Universe, the Spirit. So it runs many layers deep, and we basically talk about ways that you can get in touch and address your distortion patterns and transform them into loving patterns of perfection within your being that you can share with other people. And these come in the form of paying attention to dreams, using affirmations, getting close to nature, getting in alignment with spirit, going on vision quests. Lots of different ways to do this. And so I'm looking forward to sharing this episode with you, and I hope that you learn a lot.
I started working with the angelic realms, and some of my guides were saying to me, if you're able to pray for someone who's wounded you, if you're able to bless them with exactly what you need, the greatest thing that you can imagine for yourself, it comes back to you. So if you're wounded by your mother, if you're wounded by your father, and you're able to visualize them receiving all that they need, all the healing that they can ever possibly imagine, all the love that they might ever be able to experience, it spirals back to you. Whatever we end up intending or visualizing for others always ends up creating a part of our reality. So I feel like that's one of the biggest components in our ability to connect with that love, is what our intentions are for other people, especially people who've hurt us, or that we've perceived have wounded us. If we're able to offer them a blessing, if we're able to intend or visualize or imagine them as a healed, whole being, then it automatically creates that potential for us in our own life, which is very difficult to do if you've dealt with someone who you feel has really, really hurt you. The other side of it is how empowering it is when you can release the wound and wish the best for them. It makes you feel like you are that higher dimensional being, because you've raised your perspective to a level where you're no longer resonating with the pain and discomfort of being in the situation. You've risen above it. You've transcended to the point where you're looking down on the situation and wishing them nothing but love, because you've expanded so far beyond it. And in that moment, you've empowered yourself, you've empowered them, you've not only healed, but you've evolved, which is the point of being on earth. It's for all of us to evolve. So that's the best thing that I've learned as far as any kind of core wound.
Yeah, core wounds. So, I feel there's definitely what goes along with some people experiencing a core wound from something that's really deep, that's difficult for them to get over, for example, with the parental figures. Do you think that that has some tie or link to like a much grander view, say, as we mentioned in the beginning, the mother being also Mother Earth and the father being the spirit? And so if people are really struggling to overcome a core wound with family or even with someone else that they know deeply, um it spans out more wider than they would expect it to. Like, it's coming from ancestral, it's coming from maybe past lives, it's coming from what the energy fields are dealing with altogether on the planet. And so I think love is definitely gonna like heal a lot of that space. And like, what would be the best practices, do you think, to healing a core wound and being able to? Because if I think if anyone who like they resonate with having a mother and father wound. They know that they have some work they want to do there already. Um, like it's just something that they want to heal in themselves and be able to send love again to the people that matter the most to them. Um, yeah, what do you think would be a way of we've already discussed the dreams can actually be something that helps us to heal these things, and that is amazing because it just happens naturally, where you went to sleep one night and you had this amazing dream about your mother, and the next morning it changed everything for you because you experienced so much love. And I had a similar experience with a vision, and I can think of a couple others actually where I've done some healing with my family specifically, and I didn't even really orchestrate it myself. It just happened, and I'm just there. And I remember one, we're all stood around a tree, and we all become this tree, and I just see green everywhere, and it just um, it's almost like this love is offered to us in order to heal that, because we can be the channels of that kind of energy. So if someone's dealing with a really deep core wound, um, it could be, you don't always necessarily need to know why. It's just that if you're given that love, as you say, it will spiral back to you. And all you have to do is just allow yourself to give it. Um, and that seems quite simple, but I guess it takes a few times to get it into your mind that it's up to you to heal that space. With Yeah.
I think there are several ways that are really, really effective for dealing with core wounds. The first one is to be open to receiving. Because in order to receive that vision, or in order for me to receive
Hmm.
the dream, we had to be open to receiving. So if you are feeling traumatized and you're feeling closed off, it's hard for the angelic realms or your higher self or any of your guides to come in and offer you that love. So the first step would be open to receiving healing, open to receiving love, open to receiving light, even open to receiving miracles if you believe in them, because healing can happen through miracles at any time. Of course, you have to be open to that. And then, of course, affirmations, changing out the beliefs that we have. If you feel like you weren't worthy of love, changing that belief system. If you feel like you didn't receive what you needed, changing that belief system to feel like you always receive everything you need to succeed. Belief systems and affirmations are really powerful. Theta healing is really powerful, just going into a different relaxed brainwave state where you can access the subconscious. It's really interesting because our conscious mind is 12% of what we're dealing with, and the subconscious mind is 88% of what we're dealing with. So we consciously know with 12% of our being that we want to change something. But the really important part is in the subconscious. 88% is holding there. So in order to access the subconscious, you have to go into that relaxed theta brainwave state. There has to be a meditative state where you're no longer, again, in the situation and attached to it, living it. You go into a more relaxed place in your subconscious where you can imagine that you're in a safe place and then recreate the situation, whether it's past, present, or future. The last thing that I would really recommend is that I've worked with, that I love working with, is the violet flame. We have all these rays of creation, and each one of them serves its own purpose for healing and empowerment and evolution and expansion. I learned about the violet flame a few years ago when I was studying how to make myself well. And the violet flame is incredibly powerful for transmuting negative energy to positive energy. And it works not only for personal core wounds, but what you were discussing earlier, which is collective core wounds. On the
Mm.
level, on the ancestral level, as a race of humanity, we have collective core wounds from things that happened in Lemuria or Atlantis, or even things like 9/11. There are collective core wounds. So the violet flame is amazing because you can invoke the violet flame for your own personal core wounds or for collective core wounds, meaning if there are family members that you don't even talk to, you can bring the violet flame in to cleanse timelines, bloodlines, and then relationships. And this ultraviolet fire exists all over the planet. It's available to us as a gift to humanity that we can utilize at any time. And you can use it to cleanse toxins, you can use it to cleanse poisons, you can use it to cleanse relationships, as I said, bloodlines, timelines. There are a number of different invocations that you can use. You can work with Archangel Zadkiel or Archangel Amethyst. You can work with Saint Germain. All of these beings are phenomenal, and they're available to every person on the planet that would like to heal. You know, they don't judge, they don't discriminate, they don't say one person is worthy and the other person isn't. You have to be open to receiving. You have to believe that the violet flame can work for you. And then if you're open to it and you're believing that this light can transmute negativity, they're always willing to assist you. And I think it's just a really powerful way for people that perhaps don't want to do therapy or don't feel like reading somebody's book, or maybe they're not open to theta healing or affirmations. The violet flame is always there. It's a light source that's available to any being on the planet. And as I said, it can transmute personal or collective core wounds, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Because when you're generating it in your, I'm guessing your imagination, what you're talking about with the violet flame, that's usually where we're doing it. We're thinking about, say, the color of it and how it's able to bring in so much love and clear out the space. And obviously, it's the most powerful ray, I assume, that there is. So there's many different ways to do this healing, as you say. I think one of the things that I wanted to go back to with the core wound is how to know when to let go, though, of a relationship. You can still send love, you can still love the person, but it's kind of like, is there a situation where maybe it's better off? I guess you'll know over time, right, whether the relationship is meant to sort of stay together and talk continuously. But I feel like there's this thing that gets missed sometimes, is that you can still talk to the person without having to physically talk to them. And it's sometimes when things aren't necessarily working in the main communication with someone, because there's a core wound that hasn't been fixed or forgiven or healed. There's a way to still send that love and communicate until maybe the time comes where it feels like, it's leveled out again, where you feel like you're not so triggered by that person, or you're not so hurt by that person anymore. I just wonder if there's a way to know, like, when to cut the cord or not, if you've had an experience with that at all.
I have. For myself personally, I feel like the body tells you, you know, the more you get to know your physical body, the more you realize that your chakras, your energy centers are very much alive. And our body is our guide, our chakras are our guides, and these energy centers speak to the body on a level that create physical sensations and manifestations. There's a communication that happens in the body. And for me, what I've been taught again and again is that I have to manifest from my heart space, that I need to be heart centered. So if I'm in my heart, and in my heart, it just doesn't feel in alignment, the communication is diverging from where I'm comfortable, my range of comfort for where I want to be with my vibration and my frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And if we understand frequency as our mental, emotional state, and we understand vibration as our physical, spiritual state, then there is an alignment that has to happen between heart and head. And for me, when I've said goodbye to relationships, I'm not saying goodbye to the person. I still love their soul, but I might be saying goodbye to that alignment that they're in. If where they're resonating is so far from the truth that I'm holding, then it's okay to let that go. It's okay to, cut cords. It's okay to love them, like you said, from afar. And you can write them a letter. You can pray for them. You can communicate telepathically with their higher self. Sometimes if I have a situation with someone's earthly self where we are just not able to see eye to eye, where we're just not able to communicate, I put it on pause. I go and I meditate and I pray directly to my higher self would you please communicate with this person's higher self? Would you send them the love that I'm trying to give to them that they're not receiving? Or is there forgiveness that the higher self can offer for me if the person and their earthly self is so mad at me or so irritated with me? Do you know what I'm saying? Where they're not able to process the forgiveness in their earthly self right now. You can always go to your higher self and ask your higher self to communicate with the highest expression of that being available, knowing that every earthbound person has a higher self. You can always go a little bit above the situation. If it's resonating right here and it doesn't feel great, then you can go up here and you can resolve it there. So even if you cut a cord, it doesn't mean that you have disowned the person or that you have, abandoned them. You can always go to a higher aspect of them and say, can we please forgive this situation? Can we resolve this? Can we replace this feeling of discontent, or can we replace this feeling of conflict with unconditional love and forgiveness and compassion? And in my experience, the answer from the higher self, from the highest expression of that being, is always absolutely yes. Yes, we can do that because it's for the greatest good and highest light of all.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about it being an alignment thing, where it's just something you don't want to align with anymore, that maybe your energy gets caught in a loop with. Because that's one of the things that I notice, is that I get pulled into a bit of a vortex of past me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not necessarily trying to do that, but that's what happens. And so it's kind of like, well, I still want to have that respectful, honest relationship, but it doesn't seem to be working out in the same way in the physical realm as I'd like it to. So maybe taking a step back and, yeah, like letting time kind of maybe adjust that, or just make space for them to be in your life, but maybe not as physically anymore. It's kind of like wishing the best for them, allowing them to feel that love that you might send, but not allowing yourself to let that loop, that energetic loop, to keep repeating itself and repeating itself. Because that's where we do have to say, this isn't maybe quite working for me anymore. Because if we don't, then I don't know. I guess we might end up going into a past behavior that wasn't so good for us, and we're meant to move, meant to keep going. Um, so yeah, I like that. That's really good. Um, with the core wound, I feel like I wanted to ask as well, like, how would you know if, like, because I agree that your body will tell you, but if someone's like just coming out of a lot of trauma, they won't necessarily have that baseline for what it feels like to be really calm
Mm-hmm.
and really healed already. So they can get confused and think that, you know, because I know growing up for me, I was constantly in fight or flight. So it took me many years to settle down and actually feel the difference between when I'm calm and when I'm not, and feel that uncomfortability. And there's some uncomfortabilities with relationships that I know I'm meant to move past. It just feels like it's a different feeling than what we just talked about, which is where the relationship maybe isn't aligning, because it's meant to move past that space now. Um, so that would require, like, for me, it required like years of just being able to just calm down and not be on the go all the time, to listen to my body and to feel the difference when I'm in like a space that my body doesn't like, and when I'm in a space that my body's like, well, it's uncomfortable, but you're going to be fine, like you're going to do well if you push past it. Knowing the difference between those two things, it's not always easy, especially if you've come out of a lot of trauma, like a lot of years of that. You don't always know. So you have to get to know your body again, do you think?
I know you're right. You're so right. It's one of those things that it's an uncomfortable process because most of us are taught, and mainly in my experience, it was my family who was saying, well, depression runs in our family. We have a very anxious family on both sides, and people drink, and so it's okay. And in my family, it was always accepted that people were tense, people were stressed, and they drank, and then they got depressed, and that was just the way it is. It
Yeah.
took me such a long time to realize, after I quit drinking and after I quit using these patterns of behavior, like you talk about, that were just so ingrained in the family relationships, that these feelings that I was having, the anxiety, the depression, it was prompting me to get to know my body. My body was communicating with me like a little signal going off saying, can you please pay attention to this one feeling that you're having, this anxious feeling? I'm trying to help you resolve it. If you'll go in with me internally and look at what it is that's causing the anxiety. So the
Mhm.
process of it, of getting to know your body and getting to know what the anxiety is or what the negative feeling is, and then going on that inward journey to discover how to resolve it, it's challenging. It really is not for the faint of heart, as they say, because you have to put some dedication to it. You have to put some time in with yourself and with your body. And I wasn't used to feeling calm either. It was I used to be honest with you, I used to get very annoyed with people who were always calm because I didn't
Mhm.
understand how they did it. And it was
Mhm.
a slight bit of envy and a slight bit of just discomfort, and not, again, I wasn't in alignment. They were so calm, they were so zen, and it just irritated me because I
Mhm.
wasn't there and I didn't feel
Mhm.
that way. So I was actually agitated by other people's calmness, and I was
Mhm.
agitated by their zen like ability to just transcend all. And then after a while, I realized the reason I was so irritated was because I'd never known how to be like that, and I actually really did want to be like those people. So
Yes.
it took a long process of studying different people's books or meditations or videos and observing the shifts that people were choosing to make. And when I snap my fingers, it's because, I was studying magic, and the practitioners that I was studying, they were defining magic as the art of shifting consciousness at will. And so most of us, when we're feeling anxious, we don't feel like we have the magical ability to shift at will, but we do. It just happens
Mhm.
to be a choice and a process, and the learning process is apprenticing yourself. You can learn from these other people, but you're apprenticing your own body. You're apprenticing with your higher self. You're learning all these different techniques for how to shift out of these emotions and how to shift out of these states of consciousness. Because that's all it is, really. Anxiety is a state of consciousness, fear is a consciousness. And then when we become able to shift out of it into peace or into gratitude or into love, we realize that we do have this magical ability. And that's a lot of
Mhm.
what I learned from, working with affirmations or working with, healing or practices of magic, was shifting again and again and again and again, shifting awareness, shifting consciousness. Most people start out learning to make a gratitude journal. They're anxious or they're angry or they're upset. And you start off with a gratitude journal. You make a list of a few things a day that make you happy. And just writing those things down creates a shift in your awareness. That's a very simple
Mhm.
practice that almost anyone can do. And then from there, you go to greater states of awareness. You go to higher states of consciousness, like compassion. And once you start shifting up towards compassion, you realize that there's an expansion that happens there where more love and light is available to you to help you to reach this greater level of awareness or to reach this heightened state of consciousness. A lot of other people, do healing experiences where they do vision quests with all sorts of things. They go out in nature, or they have an experience where they, you know, um, take plant medicine and they have this
Mhm.
expanded awareness where they had never experienced that level of joy before, but now they've had that
Yeah.
experience. And after that experience, they feel comfortable there. They can resonate there. A lot of people, for example, veterans right now, are doing assisted therapy for PTSD with things like psilocybin or
Mhm.
other options. There's all sorts of different options, but a lot of those people, they've gone their whole life without feeling these states of consciousness like joy or bliss or freedom. And
Yes.
by that, when I say freedom, I just mean the freedom to feel love, the freedom to feel joy. Maybe they were in an occupation where there was just pressure or there was stress or there was worse, than that. It could have been trauma, like you said, the whole time. So more and more people are choosing experiences that allow them to shift, and then they realize that you have that ability at any time.
Hmm. Yeah, because as you say, there's a lot of what goes on in society where people will go through a normal experience, but they won't necessarily be experiencing joy very often. And so I think one of the good things to know for me right now is that when I have experienced anxiety in the past, it's actually been there to, because you've mentioned this before, and I love the idea that anxiety is actually a way for us to address a distortion in our bodies and replace it with something that is joy, that is love, that is truth. Like it's not just there for no reason. It's actually coming up because maybe a part of you knows that you could be experiencing a lot more joy in this moment in time. And so it's like it seems a bit strange that you would start to feel maybe really anxious in a moment, but it's so that you can address a behavior or a habitual pattern that's keeping you from never reaching that space of joy, that space of that pattern of perfection, as we're talking about, that we see in nature so often, that we see that we feel when we experience what spirit is when it's running through our bodies and it's allowing us to be creative and experience something that maybe some people have never experienced before. So every time that feeling of fear or anxiety is there, it's actually not to be numbed then. It's to be addressed because it's that distortion is trying to lead to um, a perfection of some kind perhaps, and that would be a better way to look at it, because we try and treat the symptoms, we don't look at the root all the time. The thing is about looking at the root, you don't want to get stuck there either. You want to be able to come into some of the practices we've mentioned, like listening to your dreams. What's your dream trying to show you? Going into a meditation or a visual quest where you yourself can feel that love that you maybe feel is absent in a moment when you're experiencing anxiety. But I think practice, because I know for me, I've used a lot of different tools, and still, what I notice is that it just takes time to rewrite the feelings of anxiety. It takes time because if you're dealing with a lot going on in your body, it's moving out day by day, but it takes time.
Mm.
So um, eventually, it will kind of happen like that, where you just have that control of your internal consciousness, and that to me, that's the real hard work. Maybe we spend a bit too much time in the external hard work, working long hours and things like that, and we could spend some of that time doing that internal work, because that is going to pay off, where you're able to switch your that you can be having any emotion, even anger, even fear, and still be calm, still be okay. And I think yeah, that's something that a lot more people want to get to, is that space where they feel good in life in general. You know, they wake up every day and um, they feel good to wake up. I mean, I know growing up, I didn't feel that way at all. It was mornings were always the worst for me. It was when I would feel quite just didn't want to start the day, but it's like day after day, going through positive patterns, turning our miscreations into creations, as you were talking about, um, really helps. So, yeah. Um, so, lastly, I think maybe we can touch on maybe a little bit of the collective consciousness and what's going on there, because for me, I feel like some of the once we've done our own personal work, we're doing work for the earth as well, and we're doing work for spirit, and so it's kind of like it's an ongoing thing. The healing is always continuing, but as you say, you get a lot of that love back from doing that kind of energy work in whatever way you're doing it. So we were talking about switching those four energies. I don't know if you want to go into your side of the um, four energies, or maybe we can talk about the Celestine prophecy briefly, where we touched on the fact that as a part of the collective consciousness, what we've been dealing with for the last, say, 2,000 years is people getting their energy from other people, either through interrogation, through being aloof, through being an intimidator, or through being
A
something
perpetrator.
else, perpetrator.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's been a collective pattern of, say, distortion in some ways because we've gotten quite used to getting our energy from maybe negative outlets, maybe media, maybe other people. Not always is that negative, but we can switch that a little bit with getting our energies in touch with, in tune with nature, with the mother, and in tune with the father, with spirit.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, maybe follow a bit more of a positive way of doing things, like bringing in the four wisdom energies, um, like that witness energy you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think we could go about doing that more readily, where we're being a witness to all of the energies that are around us and literally just observing and not feeling super attached to it all?
I think that's the key. What you just said, observing. To be the observer is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
The witness is the observer. So in a situation where people are deriving their energy through drama or conflict, and they're feeding off this negativity, whether it's fear or anger or just conflict in general. Many of us grew up in households where that was the standard type of interaction. There was just friction.
Mm-hmm.
There was friction, and that's how people got their attention. That's how they got their energy, is through the attention of these conflicts. And as we become adults, where we have a choice about where we're deriving our energy from, you don't have to receive attention from others to get your energy from that. When you become the observer, you're no longer a participant. You're not giving or taking energy from the situation. You're like a tree, you're self contained. You have roots into the earth, and then you have arms and parts of you that are outstretched toward the sky, and you're connected with both the cosmos and then the earth, which is the goal. That's why we have chakras. That's why we have a Sushumna channel. This channel that runs between the crown and the root. It's a channel for love. It's a channel for light. It's a channel for energy. So we don't really need to go outside ourselves and participate in these situations where we're giving or taking through negativity. We can be self-contained. We can be rooted to the earth and also reaching towards the sky and receiving energy from both mother and father. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's what the observer is. The observer is the being that's present, that's not judging, that's not necessarily participating either, but just receiving from above and below, grounded, and very much, as I said, just present, observing without judging one way or the other is how we can receive, I think, the best energy, the highest frequency of energy, which is always the goal. When we go to eat food, we want to eat the food that's clean. We want to eat the food that's fresh, right? And that with energy, it's
Yeah.
the same way. You don't want to receive somebody's stale or negative energy. You don't want that stagnant energy. You want the most pure and the highest frequency energy. So you can receive that through the chakras in your feet on Gaia. You can be rooted to Gaia, receiving energy through your feet chakras or through your root chakra. And you can receive the energy of the cosmos through your crown and above with the soul star chakra, just by being in your body. Because when we are in these conflicts with people, we're not resonating centered in the heart. We're sort of outside of our bodies. That's why those energy archetypes were illustrated in the book, where it was showing if you're feeling like the aloof or you're the perpetrator, the energy moves up and around you or to the side. You're not receiving in the center of your being, which is where we're
Mm-hmm.
nourished. So I think it really has to do, again, with alignment and then intention. If it's your intention to be the observer and to not participate, but just to receive energy that's meant for you from the earth or from the cosmos, then you'll receive that. But if you're outside your body, if you're not present, if you're not aligned, then you're participating in situations where you're gaining energy, but it's the stagnant energy, it's the stale energy of old conflicts. So for myself personally, it's a practice. I don't by any means consider myself an expert. I'm just studying. I'm a student. I'm in the school of life with all my brothers and sisters, and I'm doing my best to understand these concepts and to implement these practices that I know are wise, that I know are effective, that I know are divine. But day to day, it's always a practice. I still get anxiety. I still deal with people who probably don't understand me or appreciate where I'm coming from, and I always have to practice. Being the observer, it takes a lot of dedication. It takes a huge amount of effort to constantly check in with yourself and see where you're resonating. Am I coming from my heart right now, or am I completely in my head about this? What's my intention? And moment to moment, monitoring where you're resonating, what's your frequency, what's your vibration, what's your intention, all those things, it requires a lot of effort. It's not something that I think every being just innately has. It takes practice. That's how we have ascended masters to look to, because they had to master themselves. They had to master their own habits. They had to master their own behaviors. They had to master their own intentions. And so I think that's what the observer is. It's the being that has mastered itself in any moment.
Yeah. I'm just taking that in, and I had a realization actually during this conversation about, because I've looked at, the good and the bad side of things, and then coming back to non-judgment. But there definitely is a more sacred, and when I say sacred, I mean the sacred geometric way to go about living your life, that is that clear channel that's connected, because it feels like life is supposed to feel. And when we have these other distortions that are there, it's not a bad thing. It's just there's definitely a space that you're supposed to get to. It's not like it's just there for no reason, as we mentioned before. So addressing the distortions is there so that we can come back to that sacred geometric space where everything in our body is working properly. It's all connected, and from that space we share a lot more love. We bring a lot more light here, and that would that is changing the face of the planet. I think more people waking up to that fact. So it's beautiful, and I'm super grateful to have had this conversation with you.
I'm grateful.
We shared a lot there, so we'll maybe unpack it a bit more some other time, because I feel like it's massive.
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
And
If you don't mind, if it's all right with you, can we say a quick blessing for anyone that's got a core wound right now?
yes, that would be nice.
All right. So let's just quickly bring in Archangel Raphael in the east, Archangel of Healing, whose symbol is the caduceus, Archangel Raphael of the green ray in the east. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Raphael. And in the south, Archangel Michael, the sword of light of the blue ray. Archangel Michael is the archangel of will. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Michael. And in the west, Archangel Gabriel, the chalice, the archangel of emotions. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Gabriel. And in the north, Archangel Uriel, whose symbol is the 5-point golden star, the archangel of the earth and the physical. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Uriel. And holding the Christ grid above, whose symbol is the golden infinity band, Archangel Metatron. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Metatron. And holding the crystalline grid of the earth below, whose symbol is the white rose, Archangel Sandalphon. We love you and we thank you, Archangel Sandalphon. We lovingly, gratefully bless, acknowledge, and empower the consciousness and existence of love in all its many forms, and pray to bless our Creator. We pray that all your creations will be shown today, here and now and always, how truly, divinely loved they are. We bless and empower our sacred hearts and the sacred heart of every being in all creation to show and be shown how truly, divinely loved we are. We love you and we thank you, love. Amen.
It's really relaxing, that space that you share, Skylar. Thank you so much. It's very healing.
My heart loves all hearts.
Yeah, I think everyone knowing that they are loved is the most important thing that needs to be taught every single day.
How truly, divinely loved